Hey all, this is Mr. Yeager for AP Physics. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos, but I wanted to do a quick one on the two types of FRQ questions that you're going to run into when you do the test in basically about 2 weeks or so on May 14th. We have done plenty of these all year, both types, and I'll also make sure I put some extra ones up on the on It's Learning for you so that you're prepared for them as well, so you can practice or ask additional questions. But we need to make sure that we're focused, that we are prepared for what to expect, so we can kind of also anticipate how they might score it, et cetera, et cetera. So, let me just go through the two types here. So, again, there's only going to be two questions. As you know, there's going to be a quantitative, qualitative FRQ. So this is one of ones that if I gave it to you was always worth 12 points. It's the longer one. You got 25 minutes to reply. On this test, you got 25 minutes to answer and then an extra 5 minutes to submit your response. I'm going to do a completely separate video. I think West is doing a separate video showing you how to handle this test online. But I'll also run through, a practice version of the platform next week with you, so you're prepared of how you might want to submit. There's going to be certain ways I think are better than others, but let's just keep going here. So 25 minutes for a quantitative, qualitative FRQ, and then the other one is that paragraph length response, which we did a few of these. We did a couple of them during our FRQ portfolio. There was one or two that we did as well for on tests. And I know those are ones that some people got a little worried with, but you can definitely try to get a few points out of it as long as writing something. So that's going to be your 15-minute one. Originally, they would say that you got 13 minutes for that one, but obviously they just decided to round it up to a nice 15 minutes with a 5-minute response. All right, so for a qualitative, quantitative question, all right, as I said, that's going to be a 12-point question. You're probably going to have 4 to 5 parts in this question. All right, A, B, C, D, possibly E part. I've never really seen them go to F and G and stuff like that. So probably an A, B, C, D separation, possibly with obviously multiple parts under A or B or anything like that. But in the end, each part of that question is probably only going to be 1 to 3 points, 3 really being the most points in a particular section. I'd be surprised if they would expand it even more. That's just not how most of the rubrics look. Again, with this type of question, they are looking for you to be able to both explain in words and with equations, but really not doing any math, all right? I've opened up a ton of these questions on AP Classroom for you. The thing is, quite a few of them are from the old standard AP Physics test, where they have you calculate out quite a bit of things. I'm not saying that you might not. I mean, it's possible that you'll have to calculate something, but I feel like that would happen maybe in one small point, okay? Most of this is going to be the ratio questions, the relationship questions, saying, okay, now if we happen to double the speed of the object, but we keep the acceleration and time the same, what can happen to the distance, and so forth. So trying to find those ratios and going, based on this equation, VF squared equals V naught squared plus 2A delta X, you say that equation, but you're not going to be solving anything. So be prepared to look and know the equations and know how they get manipulated if you change one of the variables. Remember how I usually say this is, what are you keeping constant? What are you changing? And then what is, how is that getting affected in the end? And that also goes with the paragraph length response too, possibly. All right. So it is, you're going to be using words, and that's what we got here. Justify, explained means words. Okay. When it says justify your answer, that is not start writing down an equation, all right? Since this is being done online, I just don't see them having you really calculate that much, okay, and actually get some numbers down. And I mean, even if not online, that's a rare thing on the real AP, if we were still in the classroom and you were getting 5 AP questions, you might pick up that calculator once and it might not be on this question, okay? So again, don't be falling back to just, I'm going to solve for it, okay? It's going to be why, explain. For this type of question, keep your answers to 1 to 3 sentences. All right, this is not a paragraph length response. They're looking for you to be able to answer in 1 to 3 sentences. So for example, if the answer is increase. So they ask the question and go, will this increase, decrease, or remain the same? It will increase. It will increase because based on this equation, I can see if I increase the velocity, the kinetic energy will increase. Done. You're done. You're done. You're done. Okay. So you don't want to be word vomiting here, please. Okay. You want to be making the answers quick and to the point, and that will result in better things. You could get a question in a quantitative. These are ones where I've given you like a random equation has shown up. Don't worry about where that equation is from. Like I said, you've never worried about that. Like if it's completely made up equation, the whole idea is that equation. They want you to look at that equation and determine if there is a relationship between some data or a graph given to you. All right. And again, this is all stuff given to you. You're sitting there going, does it make sense? And that's going to be the question. Does this quantitatively make sense? And that's all you have to say. No, because if I did this to this equation, this should happen, but that's not seen on the graph. Okay. Again, while each part can be answered separately, so this A, B, C, D thing, there's never a waterfall effect in these problems. I mean, I know if you start going off on a tangent, you could really, yes, that would be that's your own fault, all right, that you've gone off the wrong direction on it. But, if you don't understand A, keep going to B, and you can still answer it. That they don't have to be answered together. But there should, there is usually some semblance of connection between the parts. Again, not always. Don't be forcing yourself to find these things. But if there is like a 2I and a 2II question, okay, I guess AI and AII, they won't do 2II. There's probably a connection between those two. Okay, if they're both part of the same letter grouping, there's probably some connection. Try to find that along the way. Okay, so again, big parts for these. The answers are going to be short sentences. You're looking for the relationships from an equation, putting it into words, looking for ratios, relationship questions. I mean, if you've watched some of the AP videos, I forget what Jacobs calls it. His very first rotation video, he does something like this where you're looking for the relationship. It's unlikely that you're going to get numbers, but so be prepared for explaining why things happen versus let's just put a bunch of math together. For the other question, the paragraph length response, okay? These questions are generally broken up into 2 parts, okay? Even though the one I'm going to share with you real quickly, there's 3 parts to it. But they're usually 2 parts. There's a setup question where you're given the situation and it's just a very quick, increase, decrease, does this make sense? Again, very short, 1 to 2 point question. Even can be possibly like a 1-word answer thing, but usually it will be just 1 sentence. And then they get into, manipulating a little bit more and asking you through, a clear, coherent paragraph length response, explain why is this going to occur? And again, that's usually worth the 5 to 6 points. All right. So as we've said, the short 1 or 2 point part, often just a sentence. The paragraph, you're usually looking for 4 to 5 sentences where you're slowly revealing the answer with some physics concepts. Now, I'm not saying there's 4 to 5 different physics concepts. I'm saying, based on this physics concept, if I do this, this happens, this is held constant, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I'm going to do a quick example, one that we've done before a bunch of times, but I'm going to run through that where you're going. You need to try to break it up. I think that was one of our issues. Some of you guys know the answer, but you just write one giant sentence or 2 long sentences, which is all correct. But again, my worry there is you're not going to get that paragraph, that 1 point that you wrote a paragraph. Okay. There is a description of the paragraph length response, which I'll attach onto It's Learning as well. A breakdown on College Board about what you're supposed to do with a paragraph length response. And I mean, the main idea is that it's that your writing is logical, that it's sequential. So you're saying because of this, this will then happen. Because that happens, this will happen. Because that happens, this is why the official result occurs. So that you're not just jumping from one to the other. You're going, this happens because this happens. Oh, by the way, there's also this and this and this and this, that you're not jumping all over the place is what you're looking for. So again, I strongly recommend that you're trying to write short, concise sentences. You can use equations in those sentences, but again, absolutely not solving for anything. No math, no numbers should really be involved with it. And again, you're just trying to develop a logical order to completing the problem. Okay, so I have two questions that I'm going to show. You've seen these before. So this one right here from energy, this would have been a possible qualitative quantitative question. Okay, where we had this situation where the box is coming down off the ramp and then flies off the edge. All right, and I can see this type of thing happening. Again, I feel like the quantitative qualitative question, it is a total guess, is going to involve energy, motion, force. I think the qualitative quantitative, and I could be completely wrong. My guess is it's going to be related to a couple of our first semester topics. I think the paragraph length response is going to be more specific to one unit. All right, maybe with multiple parts in it. But I feel like the qualitative quantitative, is where they're going to test you on, do you understand possibly kinematics, forces, energy, and even momentum. Okay, and circular motion is in that as well. I'm going to be a little surprised if they throw circular motion much into it. Okay, again, total guessing here. I have no idea. But in this question, this is a qualitative quantitative because you're going, okay, without equations, explain why this would happen. So explaining things about that, explaining about the energy. Obviously, with H1, there's a small change in GPE to KE if H1 is very small, so it won't have a high velocity, okay? But it'll have a long time in air because there's a greater height, but you don't use any equations. You just use the concepts of GPE, KE, projectile motion, etc. Okay, and that's the same thing with the second part here. Then you had possibly a derivation. Now, again, because you're going to have to type everything, I'll be a little bit surprised if they throw a derivation at you. I will be a little bit surprised. They're supposedly not making you do any graphs. You don't have to draw a graph. You don't have to draw any diagrams. So that's why I feel like, it might be a little bit tough for them to ask you to type out a derivation. Okay, I'm not saying they won't. They didn't say derivations are off. They said you won't have to do a graph and you won't have to draw any figures. So there's no drawings involved. But, in this particular quantitative, this was the quantitative part, is that you put the equations together. And then quantitative qualitative is you're explaining your equation and how it relates back to your description. So again, it's connecting the equations with the wording, with the concepts. That's the big part about all this, about a qualitative quantitative question. For this one right here, if you remember, this is an early one. This is a paragraph length response one. This is the one showing the projectile motion, one object just falling straight down, one being shot horizontally off the table. You had to do this quick part of just doing the free body diagrams. Like I said, that's not going to be something they're going to give you. They're not going to ask you to draw a diagram. Okay, that's what they told us. So let's see if they keep their word. Here's a graph. So again, this is different because unfortunately everything here on this question I picked, there were drawings you have to do. You're not going to have to do a drawing. It might be one where it's like, instead of a drawing on it, maybe they ask, if they increase the height of the drop, what can you tell me about the velocity it hits the ground? Okay, that might be a pretty simple question, but hey, that might be something involved. Okay, or maybe it would be something like, which one would hit the ground with more velocity? I could see that, and you would just say B would hit the ground with more velocity because it has a horizontal and the same vertical velocity. Okay, now over here, then you get to your paragraph length response. Okay. Explain why the spheres reach the ground at the same time, even though they travel different distances. Okay. So in a clear, coherent paragraph length response. So in this one, usually in these paragraphs, we're going, what equation are we interested in? What equation is helping me determine the time it takes to hit the ground? All right. And in the end, that's the delta x equals 1/2 at squared formula. I mean, that's really what it ends up being, delta x equals 1/2 at squared formula. So identify the equation. What's held constant? What's the same for both parts. Well, in this equation, they obviously are accelerated the same. They're accelerated by gravity. So that would be your second point. Third point. Now, what could obviously affect the result? All right. Well, technically, we should be including velocity, but there's no vertical velocity for either one. So the vertical velocity for both is 0. The horizontal component does not affect the vertical component. They're falling from the same height. So based on the equation, if the height's the same, if the vertical velocity is the same, if the acceleration is the same, they're going to hit the ground at the same time. All right. So I hope that helps out some. Obviously, again, I'm trying to put on as many questions as possible for you to be able to practice with this. Your mock FRQs are examples of quantitative, qualitative, and a paragraph length response FRQ examples for you to do. And we go from there. Okay. Again, guys, miss you. If you have questions, please ask.